Today's podcast is in a 500-year-old castle in West Coast, Ireland. What a tremendous opportunity this has been. Amazing conversation with Philip and Pauline Mckernan, two of my favorite people to hang out with and dive in with. And we got into aspects of fears, insecurities, being seen and unseen, being met and unmet, and all these layers of feeling just the rawness of being a human and the emotions that sometimes we want to avoid and don't want to feel. They don't go away. And so in this episode, we dive into all the goods, and both Philip and Pauline share authentically, and I think you'll find it's really beautiful and powerful, and especially coming from this place, there's a special energy in this building today, and if these walls could talk, I think there'd be a lot that would come through, and I believe it came through all of us here today, and yeah, hope you enjoy. Yeah. Pauline, Philip, thank you for agreeing to spend time with me in this amazing place. This castle, which I'll invite elaboration on in a moment here, but I do want to express my gratitude for being here and connecting in a conversation on camera in a really sacred place. And it's become sacred to me. I've been here once before, and being back here is profoundly special. But more importantly, being with both of you. So thanks for saying yes.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome. With some reluctance
on my part.
On my beautiful wife, who's not used to being interviewed, but I said to you before, this is the first ever interview in this castle in its 500 years that we're aware of. So it's a privilege to have you conducting that, so thank you.
Well, beautiful. Well, maybe we could start off by just talking about where we are right now, and I could say lots about it just, sitting here, taking it in as somebody from BC, Canada. One doesn't often find themselves in a castle, and in Ireland they're a little bit more plentiful for sure, but this is a very special place. And yeah, would you like to just share a little bit about it? I know you guys have been here for some time, but a labor of love and then some, I know. And yeah, share a bit about where we are.
Yeah, do you want me to kick?
You go.
Yeah, so we're in a very special place. We're on the west coast of Ireland. We're in a place called County Clare. And more specifically, we're in the Burren, which is this ancient landscape. Essentially, the Burren is made up of limestone, which was formed 364 million years ago. So it's a very sacred place. There's a lot of energy in the land. It's a great place to come and reflect and to heal. And we've been running retreats here for 16 years in this little tiny valley, which is about 2 kilometers in width and 5 kilometers in length. And for years wanted to buy a little cottage or something, and then this came on the market, and I remember opening my laptop, living in Vancouver, BC, and opening up my laptop and seeing this rundown little castle on the west coast of Ireland, and closed my laptop very quickly because of all of my limiting beliefs and stories and everything else, and fears and inadequacies. And then about 3 months later, opened the laptop again, called Pauline into the room. We were living in Boulder. And she walked into the room and said, can you imagine, I said, expecting her, not even expecting, wanting her to go, God, no. And she said, yeah, I can actually. And we came back in the middle of COVID, or at some point in COVID, our business was down significantly, live events. And we sat in this room, and I asked Pauline, I said, what do you think? And she said, and bearing in mind there was water coming down through it, there was a smell of rats, bats, mold. Just the place was so run down, and the grounds were basically overgrown. And Pauline said it's perfect, and then we became the stewards. We thought we became the owners, but actually, more importantly and more precisely, we became stewards of this place. And the last thing I'll share is that our ego wanted to have a plan and a strategy and a vision for it. And as soon as we stopped trying to force this place to be something we wanted it to be, and we listened, it then silently spoke to us through moments of inspiration, and it guided us in terms of what it needed to be for the next phase of its life.
Wow. How does it feel for you landing in here? And I mean, me being in here now, it's anything but run down, and everything is just spectacular. And even in the 2 years it's been since I've been here, I could see even more, and just feels more lived in the best way possible, and everything just feels really right. And so I'm curious how it's been for you. I know it's been a tremendous journey, to say the least, probably.
Yeah, it's been a complete roller coaster. So from fear to excitement and everything in between. So we've had great days and horrendous days when there's been water leaks and all sorts of animals running around the place, to having amazing events here and beautiful people like yourself visiting. But it's been really, there's an energy here that you don't find many places. So when we come here to work, every day we work here, I feel so grateful, and I thank the place because it kind of speaks to you. I know that sounds a bit strange, but like it kind of informs you what it needs. And it's just the most magical place, and we've had some beautiful healing events here. So it's, it's a privilege. It's a real privilege.
Well, and there's some interesting threads I want to pull on with what you both shared. And I have my own experience with this too, of shifting from having my own ideas about what I want to do, or creating events or experiences and things, and then listening to what wants to be there and what wants to happen in a place, spaces, buildings, especially history. There's a lot of history here. And this place is 500 years old, roughly,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Or maybe even up to 800, no one quite knows. So it's old.
Yeah.
There's a very strong sense, not just in terms of intuition and based on history, but actually archaeology, that there was a matriarchal system here, and the castle would have been predated by, at the very least, a little community or village that would have been, because they didn't just pick castles out of the air. They didn't just decide, hey, this is a cool place to build a castle.
Yeah.
Even strategically for defense.
Yeah.
They would have been guided by energy, and they would have been guided by strategy and things like that as well. But there's genuine evidence to say that it predated the activity here.
Wow.
Way before 500 years ago.
Well, and even as you share that, the castle is speaking to me. I feel some energy moving through my body. And for those that don't use that terminology, what do you mean, energy? And I feel like being outside, leaning up against a tree, being in the forest, watching the leaves, like that's energy to me. Just like aliveness is energy. And this place feels like it has an aliveness that's ancient and grounded and wise. And when I think about everybody that had a hand in placing the stones in the archways and things that I'm looking at right now, their energy is in here too. Mm-hmm. And whatever was on this land beforehand. And I was in England back in November and went to Stonehenge and some of the other ancient sites, and the questions of why here? What did they know? And certainly, people talk about ley lines and energy and land, and people that have been in like dowsing or finding underground waterways and things like that. Like there's an aliveness on this planet, and buildings, I think, can start to take that on in a beautiful way. And there's maybe so much more beyond what we're traditionally taught, or how a lot of us grow up to say that's too esoteric, or if you can't see it or touch it tangibly, then it doesn't exist. But I've learned the opposite is true as well, especially in Chinese medicine. And it's a bit more of my work over the years, that there's so much about the space in between. And if we're listening, there's so much that can come back.
Yeah.
And so in this place, it's really beautiful to hear you say that you've both been listening in your own ways. And that is a gear that I've been shifting into probably slowly over many years with building an event like the New Human series that I'm doing. And it feels like I'm not really in charge of it. It's more listening of, what does this event need from me? What does it want to become? How can I show up and be more of a steward with it? And it seems like there's a bit of a letting go, or you have to kind of get out of the mind a little bit of our own agendas. And so I'm kind of curious how you see that showing up in life in other places where maybe you're listening more now, or maybe for some time, but maybe this castle has helped bring that online even further.
100%. Yeah, it's one of the things we discovered here was that there was a reason we were drawn to this specific castle. And we had heard that the family who built this castle, the O'Loughlin's, had built 16 castles approximately. And one of the things we did in the early stages is we engaged a historian to write the history of the castle and the surrounding areas, because if we didn't do it at the beginning, we probably would never get to it.
Yeah.
And he rang me one day and he said, the O'Loughlin's built the castle? And I said, yeah. I said, do you know how many castles they built? And I said, 16. He goes, no, 22. I said, okay, cool. And he goes, I said, okay, it's nice to know, but it's not necessarily profound. But he was approaching the conversation with this kind of excitement. And I said, cool, anything else? He goes, no, hang on. do you know where the other 21 are? And I said, well, I've a sense. There's only one that's active, as in it's
Just down the road.
It's being used. The rest of them are in ruins. And he said they were all built in a kind of a circular geographical spread. And 21 of them were built in a circular geographical spread to protect or surround the center of the kingdom at the time and the home of the leader. And here's me, like stupid head, going, "Oh, and which one is that?" And he's like, "It's your one, dummy." And the minute he said it, it just went, "Of course," because this doesn't have it's not on the top of a cliff, it's not on the edge of a river, it doesn't have necessarily that kind of strategic defense feel about it. But when he said this was the home of the leader, it was ironic because of the work we do, and secondly, it made sense from a kind of a feeling point of view. And the ley lines that run, there's a ley line apparently that runs right through this building.
One, it's a mirror, I think, in life of we actually are more able than we think we are to tune in and tap into things beyond our subtle, visual fields and things that we hear and touch and the tangible, that we are energy bodies as well. Our bodies are actually electromagnetic beings, and we produce tons of voltage within our system. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about the meridians. It's like the ley lines of the body, the major pathways of energy flow in our system. And so land has that also.
Yeah. And it's been lovely for me. I'm a very heady person. So I'm an accountant by trade, so everything has to make sense, But it's been lovely to just, land into this place and trust the building and the land, and know that we don't know everything, that we have to trust that the stuff that we don't know. And that's kind of cool, actually, because it's exciting that we don't have to figure it all out ourselves. We can just, let go the ideas that we have to have it all figured out, and then allow the place to give us what it needs. And it's been amazing, and it's been fun. And
It's interesting to hear her say that. To say that you're a very heady person, because it's not my experience of you. It's just not my experience of you at all.
Okay.
That's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, I think I have a bit of a head and a soul. I'm drawn.
But it also feels like it's unfair. Yeah, it feels a little unfair to say that, because my experience of you as a mom and even your intuition on the two occasions, people often cite Philip as the guy Philip's Castle. Somebody thanked me the other day. We had a group of people in and said, a toast to Philip's Castle, and I instantly went to Pauline, because bearing in mind the two little nuances that I shared, which were very significant. One was, can you imagine, on the laptop? And you said, yeah. And the second one was in this room. I said, what do you think? And you said, it's perfect. Now, I think what you might have meant is it's perfect with its imperfections, maybe, but still you were able to connect and align with this place when I couldn't. And to me, that, with respect, doesn't feel heady. That feels like it was driven from a much more grounded place.
Yeah. Well, I think, I over-rely on my mind and academics, and that's got me to a certain place in life. But then I think that, and I don't really allow that intuitive part of me to, it's a protective thing, I think.
Yeah. I would almost say that's maybe true for everybody I've ever met in my whole life, me included, that we can be, I'll speak for myself, I can be a heady species, humans. We have this big frontal lobe in our development and powerful minds, which I think is really, really beautiful. And a lot of your work, and talk about being in the leadership castle. I'm in a group with you too called Brave Leader, and that seems like that's a hallmark of a lot of the work that you've both been doing for a long time, is helping get people out of the head a little bit more and more trusting into the heart and following that. And that's how I met you guys in person the first time, Brave Soul, and has transformed to Brave Leader on my path. And yeah, more in the heart. And I see that with everybody in the group and the people that get to work with you. That's often the feedback, is they get more embodied and not stuck in the mind or getting in their own way as much. And so I'd love you to speak about that a little bit as well, and hear your perspective on both, because that's quite a journey, as we know, from the head to the heart.
And it is a journey, and I'm not sure that journey has an end, not because of the work I do, but because of the challenging nature of staying out of our mind. And our mind is obviously, as Pauline has alluded to, is this incredible, powerful thing that I'm not trying to vilify at all. However, I think we've substituted so much of our natural ability to feel. And again, I'm not trying to pick on you here, but it's just you open the door in the sense that you say, you know, I'm an accountant. You weren't born an accountant, that's just what you chose to do. And I think when you choose a vocation that requires you to be in your head and applauds you for being in your head and rewards you financially and otherwise to be in your head, you're training yourself to be in your head, and you put such a value on the intellect. And again, it's not a bad thing, it's just that we've over-indexed on the intellect and we have forgotten the core thing that differentiates us, and there are many things that differentiate us to other species, but our ability to feel and to connect and to be emotional. And I think that when you're able to connect with yourself and you're making a decision from that place, it's pure. It's just got a purity to it that an intellectual alone decision does not have. And therefore, I think when we compound those decisions or lack of decisions over a period of time, the thing I see most with people is a lack of alignment in their lives, because it's a direct result of all these decisions that are more intellectually based. And while financially they may be rewarded for that, a lot of entrepreneurs I work with and leaders I work with will say, but I don't really want to change because look what I've done. And I go, yeah, look what you've done. It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's incredible. But does it really matter to you? Are you deriving the kind of meaning and emotional connection to it? And just very quickly, I don't want to start going into sports analogies because I think they're overused, and I try to stay away from them to some extent. But there was an amazing story recently of Rory McIlroy, the Irish golfer, who just completed the Grand Slam. And I love watching all of these interviews to get to what I believe is the core nugget of something that differentiates the usual bullshit lines of, yeah, you know, just work to my mindset, it's a process and it's this, and I'm sure all those things help. But he said for the Masters that he's been chasing for 10 years, that he could not win this tournament, and he almost won it and collapsed. He said, I stopped chasing a result and I started to chase a feeling. Now, I'm not sure we want to chase feelings, but allow a feeling. So basically, he was allowing himself to feel into the game of golf and to do everything he could to stay in the feeling space rather than the intellectual space. And because he wanted it so badly, and he was in his head, he was making stupid decisions. And one last thing, just on that thing, if you go back to the round of golf, and if you're not a golfer and you're watching and listening to this, it's the same principles in life. There was one moment where he almost threw the tournament away, but in that moment he did something that ordinarily he'd never do. He abandoned himself in that moment, tried something different, and it went south, it didn't work. And then it freed him and unshackled him to actually play the way he plays. And it sounds maybe harsh, but I abandoned myself for so long. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this castle was abandoned for so long. And when we do that, the cost, no matter how big the bank account comes, is just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Well, no, there's a couple words that stand out in what you shared there is like shackled. And I imagine a lot of people come to work with both of you to get unshackled. Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest blockages or the biggest maybe belief structures or things that keep people blocked or stuck, and maybe often they don't even know it's there? Because in my experience of you guys help, free the mind and free people to, maybe live in a more aligned way. But what are some of the steps that you kind of see right off the bat where they're the most stuck? Because you work with a lot of high performers and entrepreneurs and things like that. There must be some recurrent patterns. You've mentioned a few things of not feeling, and as species, we can get pulled into that. So just kind of curious, what's some of the first layers there?
Yeah, do you want to speak
you
about
go.
it? Well, yeah, and I do really want your support in this, or just your insights in this, because there's a tendency, again, I do a lot of the delivery and the facilitation, and Pauline is kind of sitting in the background supporting, and yet I will confide with her, not in a non-confidential way, in a very confidential way of the sacredness of the work, but bounce things off her, and her insights are incredible, and I don't think people get to see that. I think you intuitively know that and have seen it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here together. So I just want to acknowledge that, irrespective of whether you put voice to it or not. Because it's easy to be the hero, and yet you support me so much in order to support other people. I think often people are walking around this earth telling themselves that they're happy. And I think that's one of the big unfortunate realities in the world. Like, oh, everything's awesome, and how's your relationship with your husband? Oh, like, we're a 9 out of 10. I go, great, so there's really no room for improvement. Oh, well, of course there's always room for improvement. No, there's not really. You're talking about almost perfect to perfect. That's the height of the opportunity. And if you break that down, you say, so why would this person, and I often hear people say 10s out of 10. I literally had this last week. I'm 10 out of 10, I'm 10 out of 10, I'm 10 out of 10. I'm thinking, brilliant. So why don't we do this? Why don't I go to your coaching program, your leadership program? Because I would love to know how to get to perfection. Well, it's not perfect. No, but you literally said it was. So why do we do that? And I'm not here to try to burst bubbles and try to prove people that they're wrong. I don't get any joy from that. I'm not here to try to show somebody that what they're saying and feeling is wrong. It's not about right or wrong, but it's like, why do we do that? And I think we're so afraid that it's not perfect. We're so afraid that we're not showing up as a parent. We're so afraid that we're not as connected to ourselves that we think we are, because we don't know what to do with it. So we tell ourselves these stories that actually I'm happy. So that is one pattern I see a lot with people. I see people focusing on the wrong thing. They'll come to me and say, well, I want to work on this. And I go, well, yeah, that's cool. But just be open to the fact that this might be a byproduct of something else. No, but I really want to work on this. And I go, absolutely. But don't ignore this. And this tends to be the thing that they need to focus on, and which makes this less significant, less challenging to address. And ironically, often writes this piece here. And I'll just give you one more. There are obviously quite a number. The other one is just deserving. People just don't feel deserving of the things. They don't emotionally feel deserving of the things they say they want intellectually. And they're unaware of that, which makes it very slippery and very dangerous to get to. And it's not that they don't think they're capable. It's actually they'll use that as an excuse, but they don't actually believe they're good enough to experience joy. They're good enough to experience impact. They're good enough to be a steward of a castle. That they're actually good enough as a person to show up and give themselves permission to even have fun, which I know you're a huge advocate of, that conversation and joy. They're just not good enough. And most people go, oh no, I'm cool, I'm great, I'm fantastic. But behind it, deep down, they have a disdain or a dislike for themselves. And therefore, if joy comes into their lives, they get a grenade. They pull out, very dramatic, but it's not untrue. They just pull out the pin and they just roll it into the middle of the relationship.
Yeah.
Or swallow it and poof. And then they go, you see, it doesn't work out for me. I can't trust people. I'm just not good enough. I can see why shit's going well for Kevin, but I just don't have the look, don't have the look of the Irish, and they don't like themselves.
Wow. Meanwhile, Kevin's over here swallowing a grenade. Don't worry, I got one too. And I've definitely done that in my life in different ways. I think that's a really beautiful way of saying it, because there's a few layers here. Definitely, like the good enough part, we'll maybe come back to that. But I'm curious, Pauline, with some of what he shared already, what you'd like to share.
I think what came up for me is attachment. People are really attached to what they have. And I think it comes down to control. They want to control absolutely everything. And they're just afraid of letting go, because what if it blows up? Yeah. Or I think more so even like they try to protect themselves with a certain story and a certain narrative of this is how it's got to be, and are really afraid to question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there's because I worked and I have worked with thousands of patients over the years, and the amount of conversations and the parallels that I see with that as well, the feeling of deserving or not feeling worthy or good enough for almost any number of things, whether that's financial stability or abundance or love or relationships, or even moving up in their career or chasing a dream or something they want to create into the world. And to go back to that, usually we have to go back to somebody's origins in some way, but I'm seeing this at such a collective level because I've worked with so many people, but I've seen the parallels in myself that at this point I almost feel like there's probably nobody alive who hasn't experienced that on some level. And that I'm so fascinated by that. Like, where does that come from in our human psyche? And, you know, as we work through layers and kind of break that down, then there's less of that. And it's like the need for control, to not go into the fears that maybe we're not in control of anything in the way that we are. And how do we lean into the uncertainty or something that's uncomfortable while we've built all these structures to make ourselves, you know, feel safe, or the illusion of that. Meanwhile, we'll keep, you know, kind of pulling grenades and sabotaging that very progress that we're trying to make. And so I see it kind of on a macro level, and, you know, on the one-to-one level, it's deeply fascinating to watch it.
It is absolutely fascinating. I think there's we're continually moving towards a place where we're becoming more and more robotic, and that sounds very generalized, and also sounds very judgmental. But there's a TV show called Star Trek that most people know about it, but not many people actually either watch it or they don't. But there's a species or whatever called the Borg, and the Borg have basically they kidnap you, for want of a better term, and then they assimilate you. And how they assimilate you into this collective is they remove all the parts of you that have consciousness and feeling and ability to think and independence thinking and so on, and you become half machine, half human. And I think that's essentially where we're heading. And if you force me to distill what I believe is the key driver why most people control and try to over-control, which is an absolute possibility. People talk about, well, control what you can control, and then everything else. No, you can't control anything. And someone will say, well, you can. You can control whether the cameras are working. You can control we're sitting here. You can control we're in the castle. Well, you can, because a meteorite could hit us at any moment, and we can't control shit. So the illusion of control is part of the problem. But why would we, if we had just asked a very simple question, why do we control to the extent in which we control? And I just think ultimately, it is a safety mechanism. It's a way of keeping ourselves safe. Safe from what? Safe from feelings. The feelings that we simply don't want to experience. The cameras may or may not be able to pick this up, but there's a black box in front of me, a steel box. And I think what we do is there are certain feelings of joy and love and appreciation that we have. And they sit right next to feelings of overwhelm and sadness and anger and disdain and shame and all these. And we can't separate them like we do with coffee beans or with ripe fruit versus non-ripe fruit. And we put them all into a box and we bury them, the negative ones, in the hope that the positive ones filter out in some way, and then we build a castle on top of them and whatever. But when you put your feelings away, you put all of it away. You put the whole spectrum of it away. Mm-hmm. And for me, when I first connected to emotion, like really connected, I'll never forget the moment in the day. I literally thought my insides were going to come out because I had so much anger, so much rage, so much sadness, so much judgment. And beyond that, there was so much joy and love, but I could not let it into my life because I didn't know how to connect with those emotions. Could not connect with it. And I think ultimately we're just trying our best to get through this life, get to the deathbed, take our last breath knowing that we've left $1 million or 200 grand or 500 grand at our house or whatever, and hopefully we've touched people along the way. But let's just hope I can get to my deathbed. Oh my God, let's hope I can get there without feeling. And that might sound grossly unfair, but for many, that's the goal. But they're not conscious of it. And yet the experience is to feel, and that's where you feel most alive.
Yeah, well, just want to take that in for a moment, because this is, I think, the patterning and the programming that so many have been indoctrinated in and trained or become the Borg. I know what you're talking about. I watched Star Trek when I was a kid. And yeah, the assimilation into everything being the same and not feeling and not emoting or feeling willing to share. And I certainly see this with men. I see it with all walks of life, really, whereas we don't always share what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And suicide rates in men are just through the roof on the planet right now, and others too, but in particular, because I've been looking at these stats lately, 80% is men. And so the thing that my mind wants to say about that is because especially that suppression of feeling, of not talking about it, of stuffing it down, is a pretty pervasive program. And we see that, I think, even in healthcare in different ways. And I love all aspects of health and medicine. My mom was a nurse, and so I have a healthy respect for all the modalities available. And there's this theme of suppressing. If we get a fever, got to get rid of it. If you have any pain, got to get rid of it. If there's any symptoms of any kind, we just kind of, silent that. Blood pressure, cholesterol, could be anything, rather than going into why is that symptom there? What is the body trying to get our attention around? Something is being overlooked, something's being unseen, and I want to come back to that because we talked about it earlier, that you can only suppress things so much or put them in the box so much, it doesn't go anywhere. And there's a lot of beautiful people in my life, and I remember having a similar conversation years ago, and this gentleman and I were talking about it, and he said, it sounds, I was going through a lot, and he said, it sounds like you're just thinking about things too much. You're getting in your head, and I was. And he said, sometimes what I do, you got to just, stop thinking about it for a little while, give it a break. And, then it'll probably just go away. And I remember thinking at the time I tried everything else, so maybe he's right. Maybe I'll just stop thinking about all these things that I'm trying to resolve and address. And I do need to just give it some breathing room. And a few months later, all the things that I had just basically bypassed and ignored came back with a vengeance. And I thought, what shit advice is that? And I really realized, nothing goes away by ignoring it. Our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, all those different things. And I kept trying to shove it into a box that was probably already full. And I thought I could get away with not addressing it. But I needed to come back to it.
And the other one, correct me if I'm wrong, is I often see people go, oh, no, I addressed it. And I go, how did you address it? I addressed this huge emotion, huge trauma, series of traumas. I did 3 therapy sessions online and Zoom. They were 15-minute sessions. Amazing. Yeah, I'm beyond it. I mean, it's amazing to be able to let go of all of that stuff. And you ask them 2 questions and give them 5 minutes, and they're shaking with, vibrating with anger and rage because they want to take your head off because you've just brought up something that is still buried inside of them. I often come out with statements like, a happy wife is a happy life. This is probably one of the stupidest statements that has ever been invented by humanity. Another one is time is a great healer. I completely and utterly disagree. Time will do one thing. It will allow you to see where you need to heal. It will allow you to create some distance from the thing that's happened in order to see it in a way that perhaps you realize that actually I do need to heal this, or I have an opportunity to heal this. But time itself does not and cannot heal. Like the body, I cut myself. It's, just give it time. Time's not healing it. The body's healing it. The body is actively doing something to heal it. And what I do with my body, and you know way more about this than I do, is helping that cut heal. But time itself doesn't heal anything. That's my humble opinion. And I've never said that publicly, and partially because I'm scared, because I now know I'll get more messages of people going, oh, you're full of shit and whatever. And I do care what people think. But I don't want to do all the talking. I'd love you to chat, because anything coming up for you?
I agree with you about time. I think you've got to do something. You've got to, sitting around is not going to get you anywhere. So yeah. Absolutely.
Well, the thing about time is pretty fascinating, because there's this aspect of energy can't be created or destroyed. And so I think each time we overlook something or bypass it or shove it in the box, it doesn't go anywhere, and it'll just sit there. And I see this ancestrally as well, that the amount of patterns coming up in the population now that seemingly are patterns from ages ago, from previous ancestors that have never been addressed. And there's sayings that we have in society, right? Like I'll butcher it maybe, but like the sins of the father will go to the son, like those types of things. Whatever's unaddressed will always find a way. It's like a waterway, like rolling down a hill. It will find its way through rocks and roots and trees and everything else. It's water. And I feel like emotions are like that. Emotions are like water. Like, it will find a way to move, but we don't always consciously know what is driving the patterns or the self-sabotage or any number of things. It's usually those things that are unmet and unfelt. And there's some great books on this. One is called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin, a brilliant guy who works with people and their ancestral patterns. And so where maybe previous generations have experienced, great losses or traumas and things, and there's a lot of research on this with like Holocaust survivors, for example, that their offspring often have huge amount of panic attacks, anxiety, depression, addictions, all kinds of things because of the sheer amount of trauma that would never really be able to possibly be processed in one lifetime of something that's so catastrophic that you could likely track that for many, many generations until somebody is actually actively working with those layers of emotional shock and layers of damage and trauma and all kinds of things that were horrendous. And so it's made me really curious in my work of seeing symptoms come up for people and diseases and illnesses and all these different things, that I don't think this is just them. I think this started earlier on. What did their parents go through? What did their grandparents go through? And it seems kind of poetic to talk about this in this place of 500 plus years of people walking. I'm walking up the spiral staircase to come up to this room that we're in, the Great Hall. And I'm imagining who has put footsteps here before. Like, how many people have walked up these stairs in 500 years? Like, that's an incredible thing to think about. So when I think of my own lineage or the ancestry of all the challenges they went through, and my gratitude for being alive because of the genetic, inheritance that moves all the way down to give me life. What are all the challenges, the triumphs, the celebrations, the things that they've been through, and what were the things that they never had a chance to address that I maybe have opportunity to address now? And we have access to way more information, way more knowledge, way more understanding. We can interact with each other. We have time and space because maybe we're not trying to survive as much, but I feel like there's so much that there's still a lot of survival in the nervous system, and that's where the control and the fear drops in.
Yeah, I think that's really prevalent. And I'll speak personally about this. I've started to speak about this recently. Like, personally, I hold a lot of shame. And I've been trying to figure out where that comes from. Like, was there an incident? What happened? And I haven't been able to do that in all the work that I've done. So I feel personally that that's a inherited behavior from I don't know where. And I have no substance for it. I haven't done any research on it yet, but I really hold that. I think it's a genetic thing. And so I'm starting to try to heal that rather than trying to figure out where it's come from. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to heal that so that I have a sense that I'll pass that on to my kids if I don't do something about it. And I think that's really huge in the world.
Yeah. Oh, that is huge.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was in a book I wrote, sharing something about my experience with in school and feeling so kind of alienated in school and so judged and so on and so forth. And I can't remember exactly how it came about, but my dad, I shared it with my dad, or my dad heard about it or read about it or whatever. And my dad just said this little comment. He said, "Oh, someday I'll share my experience with you what I went through in school." And I went back instantly and just went, "Can we make that day today, or at the very least the next week or month?" And he just sent me a one page. He's not a man of many written words necessarily, and he sent me a 1 or 2 page note outlining what he went through and the abuse and the shaming and the guilt and everything else, and the verbal abuse of all the stuff that he went through in school. And the interesting thing is, I'm speculating, I'm imagining, like many parents, he was keeping that from us to, in some weird way, protect us. I actually think we keep stuff for our children to protect ourselves, not them. It's often reverse. But if you were to ask me what is one thing that I would like to my dad, there's probably 2 things. One is an unequivocal, unapologetic, absolute "I love you," or I'll even take an "I'm proud of you." And I would love to have known what he went through in school, and for one very specific reason, because then it would have been somewhat not normalized, but I would have felt less alone, particularly somebody I looked up to and somebody who loved me. So by holding that sadness and that trauma to himself, he deprived me of an opportunity to see that actually I'm not on my own. And it was amazing. And you were listing a litany of different emotional challenges or dysfunctions. I'm glad you didn't use guilt, because you're not allowed to use the word guilt, because we in Ireland have a trademark on guilt. Because I often say, invented 3 things: rain, Guinness, and guilt. And we have so much guilt in this country. It must be in the water. It actually has to be either in the water or the Guinness. They actually add a sprinkle of guilt. We have to feel guilty for everything. We have to feel guilty for surviving and not dying at the same age as my friend. We have to feel guilty for joy when we see someone pass away or take their own life. We feel guilty for being successful. We feel guilty for not successful. No matter what we do, it's inevitable. And it is such a debilitator. Some of those core feelings, guilt, shame, we spend so much time on fear. Fear is a pussycat, a little tiny pussycat, or a little teddy bear, little furry teddy bear, next to the power and dysfunction of shame and guilt. It's unbelievable, and yet we have it in such abundance in this country.
I'm really curious where you might be at with your own process, knowing this land and people here and having grown up here. Where are you at in your own process now at this point of your life, career, expression, leading and guiding? How alive or unalive is it, in your daily life, or do you notice it anymore?
When you say it, what do you mean by
guilt? Sorry.
Guilt. Oh, guilt. Well, obviously, I'm at a different level. I've transcended. I'm perfect. I've got I've done all the work that's available. I've passed the finish line and multiple finish lines ever since, and of course that's bullshit. I think the most honest answer is I don't know. Because I think if I try to assess, there's a part of me wants to give you the right answer and the answer that I should give in the camera, and that is I'm about 99.9% of the way through. And by the way, if you follow me, you can do the same. I think there's probably so much guilt I haven't connected with. I think there's an abundance of it there, and even around this beautiful, beautiful place. When I sit here, I don't feel guilt. When I sit here, when I take the second to connect, I feel absolute privilege and gratitude. But most of the time, I don't allow myself to do that because I think of the remnants of the guilt that I have for having the privilege. I think people talk about having a privileged life is often it's seen it's often presented in a distasteful way. Oh, we're white men and women, and we come from privilege, and I get that. But my God, what a waste to take a privileged life that we have the capacity to go and impact other people and people who don't have a privileged life, but we're too busy beating the shit out of ourselves for the life that we live, that we don't actually get to help other people, which I think is ultimately our human purpose. So, Kevin, honestly, I don't know. My suspicion is I have a ton more guilt inside of my body, my psyche, my soul than I want, and I don't know if I have a better answer than that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, there's no such thing as a better answer other than like what's present. So thank you for sharing, because I can relate in different ways, and as I try and help guide people and work on people in the clinic and coach and do retreats and things, there is sometimes this sense is, well, who am I to help anybody else when I've got stuff to work on? And that we're never done, and thank goodness for that. And so I started more so the last few years looking at the progress in between of there's no start line, there's no finish line, but maybe I can make some progress. And maybe I when I think about my kids and as a parent, I want to move things forward if I can. And as much as I can with, work and life and just really learning more about what's inside me as well. And the emotions are the things that come up, and more sharing and more vulnerably being open and being honest with my kids too. And knowing that they're not my therapist or anything like that, and I can meet them where they're at in the teen years that they're in, but that it's okay if they see me upset. That it's okay to see me have emotions or be angry about something or be upset about any number of things. And, we talked about parenting a little bit earlier on, and you have 2 kids as well. And I think as a parent, I feel so honored and privileged to be almost more like stewards of these kids, of how can I, guide them in the right ways, but they are their own people in a big way. And so I'm just curious in the parenting journey of where you're both at, what you're learning, what you're seeing now.
Well, 2 things you said there resonated with me. Was about telling them the truth. I think that is so important for kids, to give them a sense of that they know if you say something, it is the truth. And what was the other thing now? That to allow them to see all your emotions. So whether you're angry or upset or sad or frustrated, that's really important to have those emotions and let it out rather than temper them down or keep them inside. So I think I love that. Parenting, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I feel really privileged. Our kids are so cute. One turned 14 yesterday, and she's real sassy. And our older son is, yeah, he's really cool. He's a bit of a dude. And it's beautiful to watch them on their journey and to help them navigate their space as individuals, not as mini us, but to find their own path. And it is so much fun and challenging too, you know, as they press their buttons. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful thing.
Do you want to share a little bit about yesterday?
I'll let you do the sharing of yesterday.
No, you do it. Go on.
So yesterday, Kevin, we talked about this earlier. We had the most beautiful morning. We had a coming of age ceremony for our daughter. And we'd had one for our son 3 years ago, and we had asked Maggie, did she want to do it? And she said, yeah. And that was 3 years ago. And then last year we were supposed to have it, and she was like, oh, you know, now she's a teenager. She doesn't want to do anything that's, you know, weird, not the norm. And anyway, it had to be postponed for a number of reasons, but we had it yesterday, and yeah, she wasn't really looking forward to it, but it was the most beautiful experience. And it was the first time that I've ever seen her really get in touch with her emotions. Like, she'll get emotional before in reaction to unmet expectations or frustrations, but she got really in touch with her emotions, and it was beautiful. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, and again, you know, I'm a person who just I'll share anything. My kids were a bit mortified that I shared a post on social media a few months ago, and it was related to them or connected to them, and they said, listen, my friends are going to watch this online or whatever. And I just said, are you asking me to be different? Because I said, that's never going to work. And the minute our kids come to me in particular, and they go, but Dad, my friends are, and I said, as soon as that comes, I don't want to know what's next. In other words, my friends have unlimited time and technology. My friends are going out till 12 or whatever it is. I just go, I want to talk to my son. I don't want to hear what other people are doing. So I have no problem sharing this, even though it might come back to haunt us in the future. But where Maggie got really emotional was when Charlie had an opportunity to share something with her, and he read a piece, and as soon as he started speaking, Maggie just broke down, and yet Maggie would act as if she doesn't care less what Charlie thinks. In fact, you know, she doesn't even want to know what he thinks about her, about anything else for that matter on occasion. But yet, when you saw it yesterday, you can see how profoundly important it is, how Charlie feels about her. And while we read things and spoke to her, they weren't insignificant, they just weren't as important for her to hear yesterday than what Charlie, her brother, said about her. And he read this piece that was written by somebody, but then beautifully set it down and then shared that what he noticed in Maggie, even though he gets frustrated with it, is that she shows up as herself. And he acknowledged that, and he says, and I wish I could do more of that myself. And you know, when Maggie was a young little kid, she'd, as she, you know, up to what, 8 or 9, she'd wear these odd socks, and they were
odd shoes, actually.
And odd shoes, actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, and they were noticeably odd, like a red one and a blue one or whatever. And you know, she just wouldn't give a shit what people thought. And yet the world is conspiring every day to chisel away at who she is, to conform and to contract and to shrink, so people can make sure, she's just a little bit like me. Oh my God, like we don't want her to be any different because that might make me look or reflect upon my life differently. And I just hope she just never loses that sassiness or independence or. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. But it was a magical morning and something I'm so grateful of. One of the best things we've ever done as parents.
Wow. Well, I think there's something to be said about like living a more ceremonial life where we're taking time for, you know, really big thresholds and coming of age. And I think that was in our society a lot in the past, and it's kind of been lost. And it's beautiful to see that coming back and hear about that and how powerful that is. And I wanted to weave it back to something we talked about earlier, is the being seen part. Because one of the powerful parts of what you just shared is it sounds like, you know, Maggie was seen by her brother. And how powerful it is to be seen by somebody that we love or we're close to. and how many people are actually terrified of being seen, but that is also the thing they want the most. And I'm really curious how you see that show up in clients and, you know, groups and things that you work with, because it's a theme you mentioned earlier. And again, I see it in the clinic all the time. People are feeling so unmet and so unseen. But I've also learned as I've gone deeper to, you know, try and extract like what's underneath that. I think they're actually more terrified of that than anything else, because to be seen, you have to allow it as well. And I'd love your both of your takes on that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll go because I'm the person who I am like, this is very uncomfortable for me because it's really being seen. And when I was asked to do this interview, I thought it was voice only, and I only found out yesterday that I was on camera. So yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but I've always been terrified of being seen, and I think that I talked about shame earlier. In some way, it's related to feeling shame. And that's what it brings up for me. So I don't know whether it's I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing or make a fool of myself or show us up, or I don't know what it is, but it's been really vulnerable, and I find it really difficult. And I think a lot of we had this as a theme for one of our events a couple of years ago, do you remember? And it was really huge. Everyone in the group were terrified of being seen as themselves. And I think that really brings up for me is about, am I okay with who I am? Am I okay to show up as myself? And then if I show up as myself, will I be rejected? And I actually think it might be, if I show up as myself, then I'm as good as I can be, and that's it. And then people can take or leave me. So that's kind of what's coming up for me today. So this isn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, actually. So thank you, Kevin.
It's not over yet.
Well, I think for the record, thank you for saying yes, even on, you know, short notice, and the way that you carry yourself and the way that you speak and communicate and all the interactions that I've had with you. I want to see more of that in the world, and I'm really grateful that you agreed to be on camera. To just be able to share who you are and your own authenticity, and that it's not always all about Philip, right? So.
You hear?
No. I do hear. Last year, at the beginning of an event, and I've attempted to do this before. I've attempted to get this sentiment and put it out there, and I think I've done it reasonably well in the past. But I did it in a way that I felt it fully for the first time, and I opened up this week-long retreat by going. Some of you are still under the illusion that you're here for me or whatever insights I can give you. And I can assure you you're in the wrong room. And I said, if what's going to happen this week is something hopefully profound is going to emerge from you. Something profound you might hear from somebody else that triggers something inside of you. Something around this castle, this land, the landscape outside, the limestone is going to touch you in some way, shape, or form that's going to allow you to experience. And I would say this about Pauline, or in that case, it was around Marie or Ms. who has supported me in this event. And I've seen this with Pauline. Pauline will say something that will touch you. And on the odd occasion, the very odd occasion that I say something that really moves you or strikes you or connects with you, there's a 99.9% chance that I've been asked to share that because of something you've said, everyone has said, someone else has said, nature has given me, Pauline has pointed out or given me an insight. So it's not even from me anyway. And I was able to say that in such a, it was a beautiful moment for me personally, just me personally, because I was able to relinquish the sense of self-importance and pressure on myself to be something I'm not. And if I could tell you how many times Pauline has facilitated a conversation where I've been able to see something I could not see on my own, was not able to see, or didn't want to see, and then I was able to walk into a room or onto a stage and share it and become the hero, it would be, I wouldn't be able to count it on hundreds of hands. And I just want to acknowledge that publicly, because you do that so beautifully and so brilliantly. And there's a little part of me feels that, you know, there's, without putting pressure, and when I say this, it feels like I'm putting pressure, is the world wants more of you. And I think as a result, whether it's actually not even about me, whether it's less of me, they want more of you. They do.
Thank you. And well, Philip, you know, I see my role is that I am a great supporter of people, and I don't need to be the person on stage or to get the accolades. So that's where I come from.
But that statement is so funny. It almost
Here we go.
implies, I don't need to be the person on stage, and looks at me as if I have a love, I don't like the word hate, but I have a love-hate relationship with stage. I have a love-hate relationship with facilitation. I have a love-hate relationship with this. There's an assumption by you and other people that actually, I love this. I don't. I am petrified of being seen. Petrified. Absolutely. So it is this thing, it's the scariest thing I do. It is so scary for me to put myself out in the world. And for whatever reason, I've never said anything other than that. Maybe because of my silence, people just assume, oh, you're seeking it, you want it, you love the stage, you're this, you're that. Petrified. I never wanted any of this. Ever. I wanted to hide. I was the kid who would sit in school, count the dandruff in the back of the kids in front of me to stay sane in my head. Didn't want the teacher to ask me a question, didn't want my friends to look at me, didn't want to be asked to read because of my dyslexia, therefore didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be ashamed. And I think the things that we avoid are the things that we've experienced. We just don't want to relive those things again. So when you've experienced shame, your brain, your mind, it will do anything possible to protect you. And by protecting you, it simply says, don't go to the edge again, don't put your hand in the fire, don't put yourself in a position that there's an even 1% chance that you will experience the shame you did 20 years ago. The circumstances are different, you're different, the place is different. But your brain will do everything in its power. And our job is to not overcome our brain or mind, it's to understand that in the pursuit of protection, how we're depriving ourselves and the world of joy. And to me, that's one of the greatest motivators, is to see us playing small as depriving the world. It's certainly a great motivator for me. It's not maybe the perfect motivator. I would love to want it a bit more, just naturally, organically. But that's been the best motivator I've ever found.
Wow.
Ever.
Well, perhaps there's the mystery, for each of us, that we don't have to have it perfect or want it in a certain way, but it emerges anyway. And thank you for sharing those aspects around how scary that is. And, I've been on a few stages now myself, and it feels really vulnerable to get on stage because you can't hide, or you can try, but you're gonna be standing there with a bunch of people focused on you, and that's an odd thing in life in general. I think most of us did not grow up being on stages. Maybe some of us did. Some people out there are naturally, gifted in that. It was never my plan to become a speaker or podcaster or do a lot of things that I'm doing now. So I find it sort of humorous and ironic in different ways that I'm here conducting an interview in this way, and that I get to be on stage and creating events and being invited to speak and things. And, I kind of have a little chuckle sometimes of, if they only knew where I've come from or what I had experienced or how I feel, and I'm doing it anyway. And I think maybe that's the difference that I feel with you, is you're doing it anyway. And you're right here on this podcast doing it anyway, even though it's uncomfortable. And there's lots of times I'm uncomfortable. I want to get it right. I want to show up in the best way. I want to say the right things. And the more I've been able to surrender that and just be in the unknown, or be in the magical flow, whatever you want to call it, then really cool things emerge. And as long as I show up, that's a win. Second thing is, maybe I could even, share how I feel in a space, and maybe there is some things that want to be shared more.
I would love to say I don't hide on stage, but I've hidden on stage. I've hidden in rooms. I've hidden behind content. I've hidden behind busyness and busy schedules, and I've hidden and hidden and hidden, and it's all about allowing I'm hiding way less. But actually, on reflection, I think I've hidden a lot more on stage by delivering the safe talk, by delivering a talk that makes me feel good. And I can judge it, or I can go, wow, that's okay, buddy. You needed to do that. That was okay. It's part of your evolution. And I see so many people hiding in public places. And I work with a lot of people who are in the public domain, and they're not showing up authentically. They're not showing up as them because they're so afraid.
Yeah.
So afraid.
Well said.
I was just going to ask you, Philip, about trust in that. Do you think you trust yourself a lot more?
Yeah, I think do you know what? That's a great question. It's such a simple question. And I think the honest answer to that is, if this was even like a year ago, I would have said, yeah, I think I trust myself more. No, I actually trust other things more. So without getting too woo-woo, as some skeptics might think, but we'll do it anyway. There was a time where I wanted, and to some extent needed, to have the answers in a room of when I was facilitating an event. I can honestly say, I'll give you an example. You were literally in the room. So I was in Central America. I happened to speak in various different places. And I was invited to speak at they call it an innovation center around technology. And there was about 300 or 400 people in this room. And do you remember the 9-year-old boy? And I didn't see him. And I'm normally very good at seeing people. So it was an auditorium. There's a lot of lights and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have obviously seen everybody. But this young boy was sitting there. I don't know if I told you this story, Kevin, but it was this magical moment where this young boy was sitting. He was about 4 rows up. And at the very end of the talk, and I genuinely felt I got out of my own head, and I really felt I showed up that day, like in reflection. And this little boy puts his hand up, and I go to him, and he's got this amazing multicolored jacket, and he's this beautiful face. He's got little glasses on, and I'm assuming it's this mother sitting next to him, which I'm almost certain it was. And he goes, if you were to go back in time and give your 9-year-old self, I'm 9 years old, he said, 9-year-old self advice, or you were to give me advice, what would you say? And I think just before that I had said something like, okay, we'll just take one more question. So I get this question, I go, I think we're done. I think we have to go. And everyone starts laughing because they realize, holy shit, this is so easy and so simple, but so difficult. So I found myself intuitively going to the edge of the stage and just sitting on the edge of the stage with my legs swinging. And I just happened, as I sat down, I just happened to be sitting directly across from his eyes. But it wasn't strategic, it was just intuitive. And I looked at this beautiful face, and young people deserve honesty. They deserve the purest of the purest response, or nothing at all. Don't give them anything. And you said earlier on that, tell our kids the truth. Most parents I know go, oh yeah, I'm telling them the truth. I tell my kids the truth all the time. No, you're not. You're depriving them of the truth. You're holding stuff back. You're delivering it in a manufactured way. They're not telling them the truth. And I looked at this young boy and I said, well, first of all, I wish I had the confidence to wear a jacket like that when I was your age. And I genuinely meant it. He laughed, and his mother laughed, and everyone laughed, because it was cool. But I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do that. And then I said, I wish when I was 9, had the courage to stand up with a microphone in front of hundreds of people and ask a question. And people clapped and recognized him for that. And then I sat there, and I just closed my eyes. And I wasn't trusting myself at all. I was just trusting that if there was something to come through me, it was going to come through me. And if it wasn't, it wasn't. And then I just opened my eyes, and it felt like 20 minutes. But it was probably maybe
30 seconds.
Sorry, was it? That was even that? Oh, that's a long time. So I was sitting there, and I didn't feel awkward. I didn't feel the need to speak. I didn't feel the need to apologize. Rarely ever experienced that. The purity of that. It was like, he was the only spirit in the world, and there was someone else trying to speak to me to give him a message. And then I opened my eyes and I said, my wish for you is that you take the time to love your family, to love your friends, and to love things in your life. But you also find the place and the time and the energy to fall in love with you. Because when you do, you won't need a partner in this life. You won't need success to matter. You won't need money to survive or anything else. They're all bonuses and things that will come to you. And then I just looked at him and I said, and that's all I have for you. And it was the purest thing I've ever experienced on a stage. Ever. Ever. So going back to your question, which is a long, long way of answering it, it's not about trusting myself. It's about trusting something greater than myself that has put me in this privileged position to support people in ways that I thought I knew, but most of the time it's in ways I don't know. And he finished it off. He comes up and he says, I've got 3 questions. 1, can I give you a hug? And I said, of course. And I got this big bear hug. 2 is, can you sign my jacket? And I felt like a rock star just for a second. He took off his jacket. On the inside, he asked me to sign his name. And then he said, "Can I get a photograph?" And it was just profound. It was so beautiful. But that wasn't me. That was something coming through me, 100%.
That's powerful. Yeah, I'm taking it in. Well, and even along those lines of, surrendering more and allowing, and even, that advice that came through you to give to him to love yourself more. And in many ways, I think that's probably a good place to land this podcast. And I'd love to endlessly chat, because I know there's, just scratch on the surface, so to speak, of the level of wisdom and depth in both of you. And it's been a beautiful privilege to sit with both of you in presence here in this space and just, converse about things that are important. And if one person can take something away from this podcast, from this conversation, then I think we've, shown up in that and get to live our lives and know that we're people too, and that we feel just as much as anybody else, whether on stage or anything else. And but it doesn't mean we can't be of service. And I really appreciate both of what you've shared here and time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.